It's the Lean Into Art cast, the show where a couple visual storytellers get together, take a perambulation around, take a rock? Take a walk around a topic and look at it 10,000 feet up, look at it every conceivable angle, look for the hidden dimensions, depths, and complexities, and then all that thinking has to be, used in some way after all, and then we go on the ground and try to walk away with some actionable items, helpy tips, ways to put all of this thinking into practice. We think hard about visual storytelling, so you will too. My name is Jersey Droz, cartoonist and teaching artist. The other guy is...
Hi, I'm Rob Stenzinger. I'm a designer and coder, and it's good to be here, Jersey. We made it through a big thing. Our first, in a way, it's almost, our first 30-day creative challenge that we've really, put out there through Lean Into Art. I mean, we had the 30 classes, which was a big kickoff event for us. I guess, in a way, that was a creative challenge, wasn't it? But It's been a while. Yeah. Yeah, it was, yeah. I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's been a while then, so it's not our first one, and here you go. Well, so Art SoundOff, what was that?
Art SoundOff. So, a little over a month ago, we came off of the Inktober Challenge, where it was started by Jake Parker, and that's at mrjakeparker.com/Inktober, where he challenged the world to do one ink drawing, one ink sketch a day for every day for the month of October. It's been going on since like 2009 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
We both participated in that, and riding high at the end, we were like, it'd be fun to do another challenge for November. Pardon me. And
hey, we've been out of our houses this long. What's one more one more stop on our adventure?
So we decided to record a journal microcast every day for the month of November, and then we opened up the doors for everybody else to play along with us with the Art SoundOff hashtag, and play along people did, and it was a lot of fun. And the funny thing is after doing so, I resuscitated my old Thunder Punch Daily microcast show for the month of November 2014, and when it came to the end, I was like, I'm looking forward to not doing this every day anymore. And then, the second day, December 2nd, I'm like, there's a piece of my experience missing.
I miss that thing. Yeah, very similar here too. So we're going to talk a lot about that. That's the focus of today's episode. But
we're going to spend the next hour and change talking about reflecting upon a month of reflections. How did we come out different? Mm-hmm. What did we learn from this thing? We gathered reflections from the leaners who participated in the thing. Got a lot of great thoughts from everybody, both through their microcasts and also in emails and texts, or not texts, but tweets that they sent us. But, after you pursue a thing, even if it's a thing that is a reflection about something, it deserves more reflection to find out what did you just go through, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you package this up and communicate that experience to somebody else? Anything else? Any other justification for reflection?
No, I think because that's what we do. That's really
justification
core.
Enough, right? Yes, that is what we do around here.
We've never come up with precisely something we could call the Lean Into Art Manifesto. Yet, our about page and whatnot, it reflects that sort of perspective, saying, it's really important to put yourself in the position to keep learning and teaching, and the journaling is this interesting hybrid of both activities that it's a big part of what we've endorsed, and we finally made it very explicit, saying let's do that for every day for a month, which again, I'm very thankful for you having instigated this, and then for all the participation we had and whatnot too, and I can't wait to dig in deep into that. But oftentimes we don't want to just pick up shovels and start digging, right? Might hurt myself, right? Might pinch a nerve.
Oh, my lumbago.
Exactly. So to avoid stress and injury, we should do some kind of warm up, Jersey.
All right, we could do a warm-up. We could do what we call in the show the curveball. The curveball is an intellectual warm-up exercise where we ask each other questions that aren't looking for pat answers, not yes or no answers, more of how and why answers. We both have curveballs this time, Rob.
Mm-hmm. Is it curveball? Quick
do,
draw?
do you want to match for it? Do you want to do rock, paper, scissors? Do you want to flip a coin? Or do you just want to just one of us take the initiative on this thing?
Ooh. Let's see. You know what? If we're doing quick draw, I'm just going to go for it. So,
okay.
Thunder Punch Daily podcast that's been around for a few years. I mean, you kicked this off back in the Art and Story days, and it was like this. One of the featured things that you guys offered as part of like the Supreme Story or Service thing that you experimented with and all that, and very storied art journal that's been mentioned a few times, like actually quite a few times. Maybe not as often as Ryan Estrada, but it's up there as far as to be on some other podcast and get mentioned. So I was super excited to see that come back and get moving again. And what I am really curious about is, so you mentioned a little bit about your reaction to like, kind of a relief, and then I miss it. Like, so I did the big thing, it's done, phew, and then, or something, right?
Yeah.
And so what I'm wondering is how are you going to frame that decision up? And yeah, not just will you continue,
right?
Whatever you do, what will you do to frame that decision up?
That is exactly what I left episode 180 of the Thunder Punch Daily Show on. I left it on that note of I clearly need to reinvestigate what my goals were for it, and I need to, if I move forward with it at all, I need to make it very clear what my intent is with it. Because a lot of what's going to run through today's discussion is how uncomfortable I was throughout that entire month. That's the most uncomfortable I've been with sitting behind a microphone. What's that?
I'm sorry that I laughed at that.
No. I mean, that's I'm sharing it because like I'm not like embarrassed or ashamed of it in any way. It's just that's a fact. I mean, for some reason, after all these years sitting behind a microphone and talking with people, doing that made me feel exceedingly uncomfortable and vulnerable. And as I was thinking about why is this bothering me so much, it made me realize that doing it every day kind of forced me into kind of took me out of my comfort zone. Not the daily routine, but the pressure to deliver something every day put me in situations where I was saying things off the cuff that weren't prepared, and I was surprising myself. And you even noted that yourself when you were recording some of the Polytechnicasts. And I was left with this. If people, you can go and listen to it. Sorry, it's at comicsaregreat.com/TPD180. I kind of was left with a sense of like, I don't know if I'm going to do anymore. If I do, I need to think about like what's the goal? What's the mission? What's the agenda? Is it something where I just want to express myself just for the fun of it? Like the way I'm doing my Boulder and Fleet webcomic right now, where I feel at ease about it and I'm not thinking about it too much. I'm not uncomfortable sharing it. I'm not uncomfortable like tweeting about it a couple times a day because I'm having fun. Or is it something where I'm going to explicitly have some kind of service and some kind of feedback loop that I'm searching for? If I want some kind of a feedback loop, what is the kind of feedback that I want? What are the milestones that I want to hit with it? How do I measure whether or not I'm getting to my goals, right? That's a toughie. I don't know how I'm going to frame it. I don't know. I really don't. And I'm hoping that maybe through discussing the topic today with you that I will get closer to that. But that's how I'm thinking about it right now. Does that even add up to anything?
It totally does. And that was, I was curious about that as much as anything, because I knew that just asking, so, hey, can you keep doing that or what, or implying it, right? By asking the question, are you going to keep going with it? I know that that's not a simple thing, but then through that, like, well, yeah, how that exactly what you did, like that's it's almost like it's a creative product, and I heard a lot of sort of product thinking with or product and or service thinking with what you described.
Yep, because like even when I talk about being laid back about the Boulder and Fleet webcomic and not thinking about any kind of like results right now, just having fun through the expression of the work, I also know that it is a product that also serves to showcase me at what I think is my best, right? I have this thing that's constantly updating so that any potential client or potential collaborative partner or whomever who has money to give me can say, that's the kind of thing he's really good at. I should hire him to do something like that for me. I don't have like a spreadsheet laid out with what kind of interactions I'm getting in that direction yet, but it's there. It's that thinking is in the background while I'm expressing myself through this thing. Okay. So, and maybe this is something that maybe we can explore together, Rob, is that I wonder sometimes if this is a blind spot, is that I'm always asking to what end? Hey, I'm going to do a thing. To what end? Well, what do you want to do with it? Well, I just want to express myself. I just want to say something. I just want to, be a part of something.
Just be cool, bro.
Yeah.
It's the right. Well, we share a similar bias in that regard. So yeah, I look forward to. We'll both be helping each other explore that, I think.
Okay. Well, we got to get through my curveball then really quickly.
Okay. All right.
Because I am dying to know this because I mean. One thing I noticed in listening to the Polytechnicast was it sounded effortless. It sounded like you came to the mic prepared, not in terms of, I got a stack of papers here with a bunch of points written on them, but just like, I thought this through. I'm going to sit down with you, and I may go off in some divergent tangents, but I got such a clear idea of what I'm getting at here that even if it takes me a minute or two to get there, I'm going to get there, and you're going to understand where I'm coming from when I get there. So my question is that can you describe the 5 minutes before hitting record?
That varied based on the day of the month.
Sure. You were traveling, too.
The traveling days was odd. Because my wife Kate, she mentioned she listened to one of those and she said it was kind of like you were whispering or something, and well, it just feels weird recording in the middle of the night in a hotel room. So yeah, because it was just so quiet. And let's see. Normally though, so in my comfort zone of my setup in my office, the 5 minutes before, I do like to prepare lightly. And the mental model I have in mind is I don't want to provide myself complete dialogue. I don't want to provide myself a even complete outline. But what I want to do is have almost like framed zones that wander somehow from one zone to the next zone, and I just have that in mind and have it somewhere that I can glance at. So I can see the time that I've been recording, and also the that general intent that when I say one of the things I say when on the Polytechnicast is the thing that inspired me to hit record, because if I can't get over that threshold, I'm not hitting record, and so that's what's going through my head. It's like, and I honestly, it's if I have that in hand, it's like if my preparing part of my brain says I have this many to the cop or the judge part of my brain, and it's like, nope, go back, that's not enough, and then I have to go back and prepare a little more, and so that's what that 5 minutes is like.
Interesting. It sounds very similar to what I did, because I would just take note cards like this, and I would just start writing out what I did that day and look for the themes in there, right? And that was something I landed on even well, maybe we're just getting to topic now. I wonder if we should just hit it, Rob. Did we walk around it? I think we kind of did.
Yeah, so let's see. How does saying this out loud change the way you might approach it in the future? I'm sorry, I'm digging into your curveball.
Please.
Yes, I think we're totally hitting on the topic, and we're doing the curveball prep before topic thing so emphatically. But we went through this giant experience of having the pressure of doing this, which shipping and recording every day for 30 days. It is a doable challenge, but it is a challenge, And as far as like just saying out loud, I think what I will try to do is write down a little less, because one thing that might come up later in the episode or might not is I notice sometimes when I re-listen to some of the episodes I posted, I think I had what I started to see a pattern, which I don't know if other people saw it, but I had a strong first 6 minutes. And then there was questionable times after that. And then, maybe, a few other strong minutes here and there, but it was that, but I thought, oh my gosh, why wouldn't it be done right there? But anyway,
I ran into the exact same thing. When we get into the second half of the show with critique, I wonder if we can cover that a little bit.
Yes.
All right. Well, then, with that, and we're going to mention a whole bunch of people who participated in this thing, and we will link to them all in the show notes at leadintoart.com. But first things first, I think we have to fly 10,000 feet up and look at the topic from every conceivable angle. We're talking about the abstract section of the show, where we think really hard about what happened, where we talk about what we're going to do with the thinking that we did after doing the thing. Oh my gosh. I don't even know if that sentence was a sentence. So, why, Rob? Why do this thing? Somebody's listening to this thing. Somebody, I saw some people tweeting. Actually, Dee Jusan, who's interacted with the show a whole bunch of times in a really positive way. She does a great manga called Gray Is, which we can link to in the show notes. I'll capture that. She said, I think it was the last week. No, it was the first week of December. She had just downloaded the episode of the Lean Into Artcast where we announced the Art SoundOff challenge. And so she's like, "Oh, whoops, that was in November. I missed out on it." So there's people who didn't not even participate, but didn't even hear any of this stuff. And they may be wondering, all right, record yourself talking every day for a month. Why? Why do it? Except, and no, I'm going to borrow some of my classroom language, Rob. There's no right or wrong answer, but you can't say just because. That's not an answer. We can't just say that's what we do. There's got to be some other reasoning.
I love those answers, though. I like to say them with gusto, and then march off. No, okay, I can do you better. I think of it as I'm trying to think. When did I start to see? I had a friend who started. I have a friend, and he started journaling, like when we were in our 20s, and I noticed it just seemed to be a very useful resource for him. So that was kind of formative for me. I've always been a note taker, right? But then there's something about the narrative and the structure of a journal where I've experienced how I will not lose ideas as often as I noticed. Some people ask me, whatever. So I noticed that I can retain ideas pretty well, and I can find them pretty well. But then to really capture a progression of experience is super hard. And a journal, what it does is it doesn't magically give you this ability to trace your timeline, but it makes it a little more memorable. And you have a chance to have less compression over time, where you don't lose the information. Well, maybe it's the same compression, but it's not as lossy, right? So if you think about like crunching down a JPEG,
yep.
So you can explain something that's roughly the same size. Yeah, these are two size JPEGs. One is very crunched down. I would say that one isn't possessing a good journal. The other one that looks a little more crisp, that one's got a journal.
I'll agree with that. Memory retention, right? Journal, and I think there's actually been studies that have shown that journaling actually improves focus and memory retention, both. Also, for me, I mean, it's something that you kind of highlighted in the Polytechnicast was this thing that you noticed where I can spot a part of a conversation that's worth going further into. Which, I mean, that's as much out of journaling as it is out of teaching, but it's something that is enhanced through journaling, is looking for the thing that's worth ruminating on, looking for the thing, the experience, the moment, the casual turn of phrase, the news item that slipped across your feed, that's worth grabbing. That's worth capturing. That's worth thinking about a little bit more than just the casual, oh, how interesting, right? That's a huge one for me.
And that's very much related to, if not exactly one and the same. That's the analytic eye concept, which I remember the first time you really went into that was in an episode of Thunder Punch Daily. If I'm recalling correctly, I think so. Huh. Like the whole well, that's your technique. When I think you were talking about like gaining a deeper insight from the things you're watching and reacting to.
Yeah.
And then you've used that phrase, your analytic eye.
Yeah, that's something I've been using in my classrooms for years. Is I tell my students that one of the chief skills they need to develop is to be able to step back whenever something emotionally affects them, when they're watching or reading or experiencing something. Say, why did I react that way? What did they do? What did the storyteller do to make me go ah? Whether it's disgust or terror or delight or joy or sadness, they manipulated you. And it's your job to decode and reverse engineer what they did to manipulate you so that you can do that, right?
So would you agree that those are related then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Because it seems really similar. One's in conversation, and
Yep. Yeah, and you're listening to two conversations at the same time is what you're doing, right? You got two ears going, and that's why I call it like a third kind of analytic eye, because you're watching with your regular eyes, but then there's like this mystical eye kind of dealy. That's got its attention on a sort of a subharmonic track of what's happening around you. And many other storytellers will cop to this, is that it's a blessing and a curse, because some people can't disengage from that. And I'm one of those guys where it's like I'm looking for the structure and the patterns while I'm watching or reading the thing, which can ruin the experience for me. I don't get to disengage and just react to a thing sometimes. But overall, I'm glad that I've practiced that skill.
Well, yeah, I mean, it really is a practice, because, I mean, I would guess that your reaction to utilizing that has probably evolved, because I remember growing up noticing, starting to notice patterns and plots and whatnot, and actually, my mom was pretty good at that, and she would point out like, oh, so and so did it or whatever in a mystery, right? And I'm like, how'd you know that? And so starting to pick up that kind of thing. I actually was not loving that for after a while, because because it would sort of quote unquote ruin stuff. So, but really, I mean, I don't know if that's a tool. It's independent of the ruin stuff thing, I think. Just to give it a little qualifier, or
yeah, it's not a power. There's no way. It's not. I wouldn't call it a talent or a power. It's definitely something that was honed, because I mean, and when I think my evidence to support this is that I was walking on campus recently, and there were two 20-something guys, or actually it was a 20-something guy and a 20-something gal, and they were kind of like doing that flirty thing that people that age do. And I was listening to him talk, and I was listening to the conversation, and I wasn't eavesdropping. It's just like they were right behind me, so I couldn't help but hear, because they're talking kind of loud. And like it was just a lot of like, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I like that stuff. Yeah, like sometimes I watch a lot of TV. That's cool. That's cool. And I'm not making fun. And I turned to Ann, and I said, like, you think we talked like that when we were their age? She's like, yeah, probably. We probably did. That's the difference, right? Is like they aren't versed in looking for the next place to take the discussion, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're in the moment, and they're doing their best not to drown in the moment. And my heart bleeds with sympathy and empathy for that kind of experience, because I remember it was very uncomfortable, but also very thrilling and exciting and all that other stuff too. But
that's cool. This is a big topic, so like we don't have to keep digging into it, but like I'm actually getting an appreciation for how many facets there are to the concept of the analytic eye.
Yeah.
Right. Intellectual, emotional, and all that too. So
analytic eye is listening to what somebody's saying and looking for the thing that's worth investigating, noticing something about the way they talk about it. Oh, that's the thing they're actually passionate about. Look at the way they move when they talk about that. That's the thing they care about a lot. That's the thing where if I ask them about it, they're going to light up. And I'm not talking about how to win friends and influence people. And I'm also talking about like, decent networking skills, also having a pleasant time, conversation, learning interesting things. Because if you ask the person about the thing that they're really crazy about, boy, oh boy, are they going to flood you with information, right?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a motivation of discovery
Yes.
is a pretty, I think, a pretty big fit for that. Where, I mean, you could be doing some journalistic exercise, you could be doing some kind of learning exercise, and the more you plug into that, the more, yeah, you'll be able to get deeper into the, especially if you're talking to a person, like that's an amazing opportunity to, like, instead of getting distracted with maybe the inertia of where things are going, you can pull a Jersey where you're like, wait a minute, I have an idea, and then spin things and go in a really fun direction, like you did during the Extra Lean podcast, which is this was, so we do the Lean Into Art podcast every other week, but then on the other weeks we do the Extra Lean podcast, and that's in hosted exclusive. Well, it's in our Patreon feed, and the recent one where you sort of pivoted our conversation toward arcades, and I thought, sneaky, Anyway, it's one of the places where it was really good. So, a place where you can see that in action. Okay, so again, giant topic. I think filing that away, because I'm like, maybe we should dig into that in a future episode further.
Okay.
Anyway, so what? Why else do you do that journal microcast thing you do?
I've said this in other places, but I'll try to put it succinctly here, is that ever since I discovered podcasts when I was, this would be like back in 2004, and I got to hear the voices of people who make the comic books, the things that I love most in the entire world, and I get to hear the nuance, and I get to hear, whether the passion or the frustration or whatever kind of emotional kind of subtext to their life story when they talk about their work, I found it endlessly fascinating. It provided a new layer of context to the work for me. Not always in a good, positive way, right? Because I found out that some people whose work I admired didn't. They expressed themselves in ways that I did not find entertaining or pleasant or agreeable. But for the most part, it was very. I found myself liking the work of a lot of people a lot more. Why do we go to conventions? Why do we go to conferences? Why do we go to places where people who make things are gathering? Because we want to meet them, we want to talk with them, we want to socialize with them. This was a low risk way for me to engage and participate and get to know these people. And so it just seemed like a no-brainer that eventually I should be doing that too. Whether or not I'm comfortable with it, whether or not I'm ready for it. It seemed very apparent in 2004, 2005 that everybody's going to be doing this someday. As a matter of fact, I remember when I launched my first webcomic in 2003, 2002, somewhere in the neighborhood, I was looking for ways to embed audio underneath the webcomic updates. And I was trying to find ways to make, and I was playing with like flash players where I would record into, I would record like an MP3 or an MP2 and then like make a flash player that could link to that file someplace on the server, and then it would just play underneath the thing. But I wasn't skilled enough to do a reasonable job of it, and bandwidth was a different thing back then. Like you had to really worry about like bandwidth costs for your website. Remember that?
Very real thing.
Yeah. So yeah, it seemed like an inevitable thing that everybody should be doing that. So, and I don't know, or would that be called an assumption, Rob? I don't know, but for me, it was voice and video. They provide a lot of extra layers of information surrounding things that you're interested in. Talk radio, DVD commentaries, right?
Mm-hmm. That's funny. You just said, I remember one of the reasons why the Polytechnicast started out as being called the Art Geek Zoo Polytechnicast. And Polytechnica was the school that the main characters were part of and whatnot. And the commentary was a big motivation for me. And I felt that if there's likely more of a there's probably more benefits than I was aware of on the surface beyond the commentary.
Sure.
Where just practicing, doing that and sharing something to try to connect with an audience, right? So it's another artifact to connect with an audience, and it has other properties besides, like a visual. Like if you already were doing a video output, like if you were like voicing a cartoon or having a live action something, that was the point of what you were sharing. I don't know if you would be as into doing a podcast, but if you inherently, I think it seems like a really strong fit if what you're doing is something very, image based and or maybe prose without your voice, your actual spoken voice.
Even if this is a little inside baseball-y, I think it's related. Is that one of the reasons why I feel strongly that we should be doing this show on YouTube as much as in a podcast feed is that people can see us, which on the surface doesn't seem like it provides that much value, but again, there's that extra layer of context, and I'll explain what I mean. Back when I was doing the Art and Story show, and it had, an enthusiastic listenership, whenever I would meet people at conventions, one of the first things they always said was, "Wow, you were a lot taller than I thought you would be, Jersey." And I'm 6'1".
Never mentioned that.
What?
You're not 6'1". You are taller than 6'1". But
no, I'm 6'1".
Hmm.
Do I seem taller than that?
Kneeling.
But like. No, but like to which I would respond like, do I have a short voice? Like why is that like such a common reaction? Like, whoa, you're tall. But it alerted me to the fact that people get a mental picture of you. And I think about when I was a kid and I had zero access to the creators who I admired, they all looked like Zeus. They all had long white hair and long flowing beards and very kindly eyes.
Mm.
So, when I finally got to meet these guys, I'm like, oh, you're just a dude. And you're a really, really cool dude, but you're just a dude, So, like, that's why I think, like, even if we don't have a lot of, like, awesome slides to show every episode, showing our faces provides an extra layer of context to create a sense of familiarity and connection, right?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that. And what's funny is I actually wish I could say what I thought the people looked like who made stuff. I think I just thought it was depends on what age, but I really would think people were pretty much in character constantly. I suppose people were LARPing and then they caught it on video and then shipped it. It's more or less what I thought happened. Obviously, pretty uninformed, but yeah, that is honestly what. In a way, so what we're talking around the idea of additional layers of marketing, right? You're trying to provide a primary product, and you're creating a secondary product to likely reinforce the other one, and there you go. I mean, and there's a lot of additional flexibility you get because of that. You get to appear in different contexts and different communities where. Yep, you're taking on yet another job, which is a kind of a theme of Lean Into Art. Yet, through that job, you're able to connect with and do further outreach in a way that I think feels like you aren't just keeping your own interests at heart, where you're like, oh, I could be of service in this way too. And there are people looking for that service. So, hey, more opportunity for you to be scrappy and get your stuff out there. And then benefit from all those ways you described, from different look, and actually hear your voice and connect because of the extra layer of content, as you said.
Yeah, and I feel like we could easily dig at this for like another hour, but I feel like we should move on to because we got to get through our reflection techniques and our and goals and some of the reflections from the other leaners. Where do you want to go next, Rob? I'll let you decide.
Let's talk about our goals. Like,
okay.
Why did we start this? So we talked about why in general doing some kind of podcast is a good idea, but then why a podcast challenge?
Yeah, why? I'll start with myself, and I'll start with my personal goals. My personal goals were I derived a lot of benefit out of attempting to do an ink sketch every day. A couple reasons. One, because I had been doing less and less drawing on paper ever since I've got all these tablets that I work on now, between my Galaxy Note 10.1 and my Surface Pro. Surface Pro 2 is what I have. I find that I'm doing less and less drawing on paper, and it felt good to be getting back to drawing on paper. It felt good to the endorphins really hit when I squeezed in 20 minutes to get a sketch in when I didn't think I had it, and I was really happy with the sketch. There's a handful of those moments in the course of that month, and when I shared it and people reacted very positively, holy cow, super endorphin rush, right? Because I'll admit it, and I don't think there's anything shameful about it. I like it when people like the things that I do. I know. We're not supposed to say that, Rob.
I know. People made fun of Sally Struthers for decades because she did.
What? What are you talking about?
Or Sally something. What I don't.
Sally Field. You like? Yeah, you like me. You really like me. Yeah.
Yes, Sally Struthers. I don't know who
yes.
that is actually, but yeah, Sally Field. There you go. I mean, and honestly, what a beautiful moment she was sharing. And right, to then get laughed at for a long time. But yeah, I mean, it's great. That's one of the currencies we exchange is our time and attention, and those likes are a form of acknowledgement for that.
And so it naturally occurred to me that, what do we do with Lean Into Art? Well, we try to encourage reflective methods. We try to model thinking activities, and we try to unbox, storytelling principles for ourselves and share that with everybody else. And now this wasn't. I didn't put out a formula on a chalkboard about this, Rob. But it's like this is the thinking that I think was going on in the back of my mind in retrospect, right? Hindsight is like I know that something we've both been dancing with for the past 2 years, I think, is the notion of becoming more vulnerable in the way we present information. Allowing ourselves to be more expressive, off the cuff, emotionally reactive, and still try to be helpful. And I thought, well, here's this way to sort of paint us into a corner. And like, you won't have a choice. I knew when I texted you, hey, let's do an audio reflection every day for the month of November. I knew I couldn't come up with 30 essays, one a day. I knew I was going to be put into some uncomfortable territories through that, right?
Such an evil mastermind. Yeah. So interesting. I actually, not in a bad way, but I mean, I know that you are very prepared, and you do a great job of sort of keeping prepared as the wave of creative commitments keeps flowing along. And I actually pictured that you had a drawer, you're like, and then here you go, here's a stack of 80, 90, 100 topics. No. Interesting.
Not even close. I have an Evernote notebook where I will capture things that might be food for thought, but they're always caught when I'm out and about and I don't have time to like construct a fully fledged thought. So I'll just be like, storyboarding is very interesting sometimes. Oh, and I look at that 3 weeks later and I'm like, what does that mean? That means nothing.
Past Jersey.
Yes. It's like, because like, as you may have noticed, it takes me a long time to get to my headline, which is a weakness that I've been trying to, trying to develop past so that I can say my headline first and it's a fully formed thought rather than, when I was 6, I ate a lot of Twinkies, and somehow that gets me to talking about how, courage is not the absence of fear, but persevering despite being afraid, right? Anyway, what about your personal goals when you were walking into this thing?
Well, I think I'm challenge vulnerable. And no, I'm being silly. I do really have this thing where I enjoy that. It's like I know I'll have a little bit of time and attention and creative bandwidth in every day that I could squeeze something out. And without a focus, it doesn't always get channeled. And depending on the creative challenge and whatnot, they're pretty darn well suited for taking advantage of that kind of time and that kind of energy to say, I know you're going to be tired if you do this, but like, I bet you're also going to be satisfied that you do this.
Yep.
And I enjoy that feeling. And it was so spot on for like, I was like, oh my God, this is what we do with, and again, here you go. Like, this is what we do. I'm just going to drop the mic now and not say why. And, but we go through reflective analysis and purposefully seek connections between the things that we unbox and all that. We do collaborative journaling when we're doing the podcast,
Yep.
and we've both had our other solo podcasts where you're inherently doing that solo journaling, and it has different trade-offs and benefits. And I'm like, well, that's and another thing. I love the practice that comes from the focus of having a particular activity, because I have a wide variety of interests, and so over the course of a month I may do a variety of experiments. Most of them I don't share.
Actually, I mean, this almost seems like it's on the ground stuff, but I want to throw this at you, is that I wonder if one of the takeaways from this whole experience has been, I forget who it is. Is it Matt Cutts at Google? It's somebody in the tech blogosphere takes on a monthly challenge every month. He challenges himself to do a different thing every month, like a focused activity to learn a new skill or take himself out of his comfort zone. And I just wonder, like, with you, with your whole polymath thing, like if you took a calendar and said, this is the month where my creative challenge is guitar. This is the month where my creative challenge is comics. This is the month where my creative challenge is coding, right? Like every month you give yourself a daily hour to take the challenge and ship it, right? Oh, guys, I just broke Rob. You ever see Rock'em Soccer Robots? That was Rob's head going, dang.
Yeah, that's... honestly, that's probably what I should do. That's a really great idea, man. Right. I'll also say I am sorry, Kate, to my wife.
Actually, I should apologize to Kate, because I know it's your kryptonite. I know it's your catnip, and I just waved it in front of your face.
But it was this perfect combination of those factors, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why for me. And oh my gosh! And of course, the idea that we're not just doing this like, oh yeah, we're setting up a YouTube streaming camera and we're gonna watch me like eat nothing but salad bar for 20 days in a row or whatever. I mean something's silly and showy and whatever. Like this was inclusive. This was like, oh yeah, right, of course. This is our chance to do that inclusive advocacy for some of the really essential parts of what
we're all on the same team. We're all in this together. Yeah. Not look at me. It's let's play. There's a big difference. Huge difference.
So yeah, it was quite the concoction of like.
So yeah, that kind of that points at community goals too. Is like we were kind of like I don't think we were very explicit even between ourselves what we hoped would be any kind of community goal. I think when we did the inaugural announcement for it was on Extra Lean, I proposed a hypothetical situation where I said, like, boy, it sure would be cool if like a bunch of people were participating, and then like conversations could brew up between different people who are all doing the different microcasts, and that exact thing happened. That was me just wishing aloud. It wasn't me saying like, let's use our infernal machinations to manipulate people into doing our bidding. It was more like, boy, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? And then it did. Right? So mission accomplished there, which was, and I don't take any credit for that. That's just something that comes out of people taking a shared challenge. You're all paying attention to what everybody else is doing. And when people propose interesting thoughts, this is where it's actually, I think, more interesting than doing something like a sketch challenge, because a sketch challenge just presents the results. Here's the thing I made. A journaling challenge presents the process and presents more questions that are worth following up on. And so when somebody like Ava of bitsfair.com would say, hey, Jersey said this thing, and this triggered something in me, and I'm going to go off in a totally different direction. It almost sounds like I'm disagreeing with Jersey. I'm not really. I'm just sort of saying this is what I think about it. That was awesome. What are you capturing?
Exactly. That was. And I'm often writing notes land. And it's, yeah, I mean, You did call it out, and I thought, hey, this would be really great if, like, essentially that happened once, right? And if we had like a couple people that posted a couple things or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, because it's one of those, because we announced this on what, the 30th of November,
October,
right? Of course. Sorry,
we gave everybody 24 hours to get on board.
Yep. So, yeah, which was kind of fun. little impish, right?
Yeah.
We're honking the horn in front of your podcast house. Beep,
beep. We were like the Great Space Coaster pulling up out front.
Yes. Exactly.
Off we go.
So, and very pleased that that it worked that it worked. So let's get. I think we covered the goals. Really
I think we did.
Yeah.
Time to get to reflections.
Mm-hmm.
We both kind of did this in our own microcasts. So you used your reflection technique on the Polytechnicast to sort of interview yourself. And then I used my own interview technique on myself in my Final Thunder Punch Daily for this, which we'll link to in the show notes. But I wonder if we could just like hand pick one or two from our own reflection techniques that pitch at each other. So my reflection technique on you, your reflection technique on me. Right?
Excellent. All right. Well, so what I'm wondering if you did any sort of broad analysis afterward, like looking for like what were the themes, like what was thematic throughout this month as far as topics or maybe frequency or emphasis.
Yeah.
Maybe not just collecting them all, but like...
No, a theme that I picked up on pretty quickly, and I found myself trying to get away from later on in the month, but then found myself just naturally going back to that. So it was a moment where, like, it was about like the third week of the month, I caught myself going like, I don't want to talk about that again. I've been talking about that too much, and I thought, well, clearly this is something you're thinking about a lot, so let's investigate it again. Was energy management and focus. Right, I did a lot of talking about like, ooh, there's a big one this week, guys. I'm gonna have to do something to keep my energy up. I don't know why I got all Rodney Dangerfield about it, but yeah, like I started talking a lot about focus and ways that I was trying to maintain focus and ways that I was trying to manage shifting my focus between a lot of different things. Because one of the things that happened in November for me was I was kind of embroiled in a lot of concurrent projects that were very different. They required different pieces of my brain. So that was something I kept going back to, was how am I keeping my energy up? How am I keeping my focus? How am I attending to these things thoughtfully and with my full attention?
Wow. So is that what you were thinking of, is how we could throw our own analysis technique? That's one thing I did, actually. So I know I did the recording of the episode, but actually since then I went back and I've sort of like I did some analysis on like word frequency and stuff like that in my show notes and
yeah, you shared that. Do you have that you can pull up on screen?
Yeah, I suppose I could. It's I used first I by hand copied my stuff out of my blog and where I was posting everything, and then I put it into one big document and I got rid of most of the redundant stuff. But then I pasted all that into and this isn't a precise thing, and a lot of information architects super hate this, but it's I find it a fun way to get to know about a body of text. And so I had essentially one body of text from all these different posts, and I should just share my screen as I'm talking here. And it let's see, screen share.
I didn't even think to do something like this, actually grabbing a word cloud. Yeah, here we go. Let me pull that up. All right.
So this is you can do this too with that similar approach, where if you get a body of text and you can paste it into a web page, and specifically the one I used was at jasondavies.com/wordcloud. And essentially a word cloud is more or less a visualization of word frequency, where words get emphasis or de-emphasis based on how often or infrequent they appear. Big words have appeared more often. And so I tried to get rid of the ones that are going to be obviously, redundant, but I didn't quite pull that off, because there were some links that I did repeat each episode, and I should have gotten rid of those too.
Yeah, like you seeing like RSS in there.
Exactly. But there's things like Dev Jam, Inktober. So that sort of like that next layer of that next size of letter, I think is interesting. There's Owen, there's Punch Daily, so likely Thunder Punch Daily related. Then interesting words that come up: mentoring, Columbo, and talk. Yeah, I talked about talk a lot. So because of a particular big project I had due in the middle of that month. And anyway, it's an interesting technique to just sort of get a look and hit a body of text at a different angle. That's all. A lot of times people will point tools like this at their tweet stream to see what they talk about most often.
That's actually a good idea. I should do that. We've shown this tool on the show before.
Mm-hmm. So nothing but I just wanted to mention like that was my thinking when I was asking you that, as far as is I did that to start looking at, well, what were some things that were thematic. I mean, I can remember too, like I found myself saying almost a chant about how I normally would have more prepared, and boy, this challenge is challenging, and that kind of thing. To paraphrase, but yeah, it's fun to get a different angle on it. How about something from your reflection style?
All right. Normally I would kick off with, if you're going to tell someone else what to expect when taking on this challenge, what would you tell them? But what I actually am more interested in, and I think is more suited to you, is how are you different now than when you started? What changed in your thinking, in your attitude, in your outlook, in your approach? What changed?
What is that? Who said that? The philosophy: your thoughts become your words become your actions, and your actions become your sandwich or whatever. I can't remember how it ends.
I wish. Isn't that The Secret? Isn't that like that book called The Secret? Like thoughts become sandwiches.
Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Where do I sign up?
I'm a sandwich caster, level 5. I still don't know Mayo, but
But I know what you're talking about. That gets batted around quite a bit.
Well, okay. So in that regard, I found that the experience of building up that practice and the shipping every day, which I did enjoy and found stressful as well, but it was overall good stress. I really, you want to hear something crazy? I think we, in our own way, are being our form of open and genuine and what have you. It just looks different. It looks different because we have different personalities from the people that we ascribe that quality to. And so in a way, it's realizing that. It's like, this is like, it's hard to judge it if you aren't like, I've really dropped in my frequency ever since I went like more full into a day job, a couple years back now, right? And less flexibility, consulting, whatever.
2 kids,
calendars, two kids. Yeah. I mean, there's, my timing has changed, but as far as what I have as, easily available for resources to focus on this stuff. But I'm really comfortable getting into that uncomfortable place and then sharing something more than I was, right? I don't think I picked up my black belt in that 1 month of doing it, but like I realized like this isn't that, I'm not that far off, because I always had this assumption that it feels like a very distant thing because I'm not, I don't know, cursing and spitting on the podcast and talking about some crazy tales of high emotional adventure. Anyway.
Right, yeah. That time when you had that salacious moment at that convention in the hallway and it resulted in defecation on the wall, right? Yeah, it's not Caligula that you're talking about.
No, and and I know I'm partially poking fun at people who are really just free thinking, free.
Sure.
I've mentioned many times, but I'll mention right now since I just more or less playfully insulted them. I honestly deeply respect it. It's like this.
Yeah,
kind of
no,
thing
I have nothing but the most sincere, straight up, grade A envy for that ability and that sense of comfort to be able to react like that.
Mm-hmm.
I look at that and I'm just like, whoa, I wish that filter wasn't there for me,
It just means like I'm more like the straight person that it gets that I help frame jokes because I'm like, huh, or whatever, and I'm not often the zany person,
yeah,
or whatever. But whatever, that's me. So that's that. So that's what I learned. It was an interesting form of a reflective mirror because I built up enough of that reflection to be like, hey, wait a minute, and that actually occurred to me after the event was over.
Same here. That is exactly it. Like after you did your final reflection and I did mine, and I ended on this note of, because you said in the Polytechnicast, you ended with, I just don't think that expressing myself that way is my strength, which led me to thinking, maybe he's right. Maybe this is something where it's not a muscle that I can develop. And if that's the case, I'm okay with that. I can walk away from this thing and say, like, yeah, that's just something that, and not to be nihilistic about it, like, well, that's just who I am, dude, I can't change. But to say, like, no, I tried, and it doesn't work. But then, after a couple days letting it sink in, I was like, but wait a second. Why was I so darn uncomfortable for the whole month? Because I was going into those areas, but I was going into it in my way, and I was finding my way to those areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So that's what I.
Terrific way to frame it up. Can I hit on a few of Owen Jolin's reflections while we're on this topic?
Yeah.
Because and I want to give shout outs to at least in name, and we can follow all the links in the show notes. Owen Jolin's, Ashley Knapp, Ava, Nathan Seabolt, and Robin White all played along, and it was awesome following all your guys. It was almost too awesome because it was almost more than I could follow. It was more than I could keep up with on top of everything else I had to do and record my own. But it was super fun listening to him. And I did a call out on one of the Thunder Punch Dailies saying, like, hey, if you have any kind of reactions to this whole experience, fire off a sentence at me. And Owen, who took to this challenge just like such a hero, he sent like a couple of paragraphs actually. And let's see. He says, I found Art SoundOff to be much more fun than I expected and much less stressful and more cathartic than I thought I would, which was surprising. I found out that I enjoy journaling, which I didn't think I would, and I also found out that I have more to say than I thought I might, and that the more I podcast, the more I have ideas for what I might actually talk about. This jives perfectly with my own experience, I remember somebody asking me in the early days of the Art and Story podcast, like when we were on like episode 75, and they're like, come on, comics, that's all you're going to talk about? And you're going to run out of steam on this thing. You're going to run out of topics eventually. And I'm like, how? Once we were at like episode 30, I was like, oh, we are never going to run out of topics. But, the more you talk about it, the harder you think about it, the deeper you think about it, the more your thinking changes. So, yeah, that is one of the huge benefits of the thing. I wonder if we can respond to this part of his thing, Rob, because one of the things that happened to Owen, and you can listen to he collected his whole series as a playlist on Audio Boom, and we will link to it in the show notes where you can go listen to them all, and they're really great food for thought. But one of the things that happened a third of the way through the month is his girlfriend broke her leg, and then he had to undergo some surgery, and talk about a whole bunch of life stuff getting in the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he says in his reflection, he says, I think I probably ended up in the last few talking too much about life stuff and a little too little about art stuff. But that's largely because life stuff got crazy and took over. And although I might be starting to sound like a broken record, I tried to take some new angles and treat it as an experiment in what I could find to share and how far I could make a bridge between the life and art topics. This is something that I noticed in other people's microcasts is not everybody looked for a topic. Some people did. Ava was always looking for a topic. And she always came prepared with a topic, and her talking points were lined up, and she was lucid, and she framed everything beautifully. And then folks like Ashley, just as entertaining, just as fascinating, would just tell you about her day. You know, she was just telling you, like, I did this, I did a little bit of this, and this is what I thought about it, and I did a little bit of this, and this was a funny thing that happened as a result of that. And then she would just end it like, okay, see you guys later, bye. You know, it was like this informal, like, chat, right?
Mm-hmm.
How would you react to Owen's analysis that maybe he talked a little bit too much about life stuff?
I think, I mean, it really sounded, it sounded genuine. He continued journaling, right? And so it inherently fit within the frame of the overall conversation. And it was, it gave a narrative to the whole month, and I mean, so it was really interesting how Owen experienced a really giant victory in his coloring speed and his productivity, and then having scheduled and unscheduled life events come up, and various puzzles related to that. It was almost like really a well-suited follow-up because, well, inherently, I mean, this is a thing I've run into. So if I put in, depending on what I do in my day job, I have something, I have a big chunk of time where I did lots of stuff, but then I don't feel right talking about that stuff.
Yep.
And so for him, I think he had this strategy where it just seemed to fit so well, where it wasn't this black box of like this severe separation, nor did it go into some highly granular type of sharing which somehow changed the tone of the podcast. It still felt like this is an artist reflecting about things.
Yeah. I think you summarized it nicely. Is like he was still journaling. He was still thinking about what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think and maybe this is when we can get to critique in a second with On the Ground, is I think one of the blind spots that I personally have is I have a tendency to default to a position of journaling as looking for a solution, right? Whereas exploring a problem can be just as interesting, which is funny because I don't demand that everybody else provide me with solutions. In my classroom, I'm like, let's talk about the problems. The problems are interesting. Let's talk about them. But when I talk about them, I somehow demand myself, you better come up with a solution, bro. If you're going to talk about this thing today, you can't just talk about how difficult it is. You have to talk about what you're going to do to fix it. And I didn't demand that of Owen when I was listening to him talk about it and talk about what a difficulty and what a challenge it was. I was interested. I was empathizing, and I was imagining what it would be like to go through that. And I was fascinated by listening to the way he was encountering it, dealing with it, and enduring it. Right. Not saying like, all right, well, tell me how to fix it. Chop chop. Right. So.
Well, that is interesting. I mean, it's is in a way, if you're packaging up some kind of solution where someone is able to have a takeaway from what you're offering, I mean, it's I think we're describing the idea that it doesn't have to be a like a helpy tip and answer. I mean, I'm trying to get more specific. It doesn't have to be like a particular technique,
right?
Specific insight, totally knowing that you're going to hit that as a key point. And now that insight is meant to be beneficial, where it could be reframing of a process or whatever. I mean, it can be so many things, but it inherently, it's like sounds like well, it's almost like you're reminding me of the question you asked me about, well, what's the 5 minutes before you prepare? What does it look like? It sounds like yours has a little extra thing on there with the solution, and well, I mean, so does mine. So I don't know if it is that different,
but what it points me at is another thing that I learned by listening to other people's microcasts is that the value isn't in a prescription or some kind of brilliant new insight into creativity, but a sharing of experience is itself valuable. participating in somebody else's experiences, even vicariously by listening, has its own value. If and it has value in terms of entertainment, has value in terms of the sort of like the first steps towards what you would call a connection or friendship, but also, I mean, if you want to get practical about it, in terms of just practicing empathy, right? Mm. Looking at other people's worldviews and their experiences and understanding where they come from. One of the things that I also picked up as a direct benefit of listening to everybody else's shows was through listening through Ava's and Ashley Knapp's microcasts, is when they would provide me with different points of view, almost as like it wasn't a refutation of what I said, but it was sort of like built on something I said. They said, "Oh, Jersey said this, which leads me to these thoughts based on my experience. This is the worldview I have, and this is the experience I come from, and this is the way I look at and react to this topic that Jersey pointed to when he said this," which helps me understand the worldview of other people and gave me alternate points of view with nuance and context, and allowed me to not necessarily retract my statements, but it did make me say, hey, this is thinking that I have that needs to go under review. Ashley is directing me towards what could potentially be a blind spot or an assumption or some kind of poorly constructed theory or hypothesis that needs to be scrutinized a little bit more, because I'm only looking at it through my own worldview, right?
Mm-hmm. It's I mean, it's a conversation. It's a different form of a conversation. It's not a face-to-face one, but it inherently is. It's incorporating and reflecting back ideas, and then possibly reshaping them with the intent of saying, well, no, this is what I believe. This is where that belief came from. What have you? And so here's my alternate take.
Yep.
And I experienced that as well with Eva and especially the Dunning-Kruger effect, which was awesome, and I went into that plenty on the Polytechnic cast.
Yeah,
but
it's funny how gleeful we get when somebody points us at what could be an error in our thinking. If they do it in a thoughtful way, like when it's somebody saying like, "Why do you do that? That's dumb, dummy. Why are you so dumb?" And it's like, okay, well, thanks for your nickel. But when somebody's like, "Hey, is that entirely true?" and you're like, "Oh, damn it, it might not be," and then we both get really, really jazzed about that. It's pretty funny.
It's well, yeah. I mean, it's related. We're here to learn and grow. It's not intended to be, and which sounds so whatever, touchy-feely, silly, lame, boring, whatever. But it's but it's true. Like our approach to improving our ability to think and analyze isn't to just express analysis that's never questioned. And when it's questioned in a way that seems like we could have a further investigation, we've been upgraded.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's great to receive that.
One last thing I want to grab from Owen's reflections that I think is kind of a cool side benefit. He said, as I mentioned briefly in one of the podcasts as well, this has weirdly gotten me over my dislike of calling up people on the phone. That's public speaking stuff, man. That's like interpersonal communication. I think that stuff gets punched up and refined through collecting your thoughts verbally.
It really does. And there is, in a way, I mean, we are sharing a narrative, and then we're consuming. What's funny is there was this, I underestimated the amount of consuming that I would need to be doing to keep up. And
yeah, it's going to be tough if we do this again next year and like a lot of people participate. It's going to be, yeah. It's one thing to like flip through a bunch of sketches, right? Like, oh, Inktober, sketch, neat. Thumbs up. But to have to listen, brevity is going to be of the essence if we do it again. When we
could emphasize that, and we could probably try to come up with better ways of discovering and sampling.
Yeah,
that'll be fun. We'll have to figure out a way to do that, because if we if we had a way to aggregate whatever, there's some fun stuff that wouldn't be too hard to do. So, dip in, sample a random leaner.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on how many people participate, but that is a cost that we may have to pay.
Yeah.
Right. That everybody would, right? Because if like 100 people contribute 10 minutes each every day, not happening. Nobody can consume all that
crap. So it'll be a fun problem to face. We'll find a way to explore it.
Do you want to go on the ground then, Rob? Anything else that we need to throw on top of this 10,000 feet up section?
No, I think we covered it. It was so awesome to be in the situation to have that problem and to be discovering this with people who were like, "Hey, it sounds like it's a good enough idea. I don't need a giant, huge explanation. I get it. I'll post a thing, do a hashtag. Let's see what happens." And yeah, it's been great.
That is awesome. So, what's this? It's low music. It's low harmonic, bassy. Means it's time to go on the ground. Kind of put all this thinking into some kind of actionable package thing, call to action, whatever you want to call it. But I thought it would be interesting to critique one another's microcasts and see what we come up with on. It's one thing to reflect on your own thing, but it's also really, really valuable to get the feedback of a trusted compatriot.
Mm-hmm.
Who goes first?
I would love for you to go first.
Okay.
But obviously, I don't know what that means. Or to
means that I would be critiquing your Polytechnicasts.
All right, cool.
I put down 4 big points for me. The big takeaways that I think were my continuing reactions to any given episode. And the thing that I just kept coming back to again and again. I mean, I'm going to start with my pedagogical style, and say I'm going to start with what you did awesome. And I was just blown away by how it is so natural for you now, and I'm guessing this is training through your job, but also just your disposition and in the explorations that you've done in your own life, and thinking hard about the choices that you make and raising children. But the clarity of framing and building your points, as somebody who, as I've admitted, is so bad at coming up with the headline. And I have to get to the headline through a whole bunch of little weird anecdotes that don't seem connected until I get to, and that's how I became king of Prussia. You can start off with a summary statement. You can build with a few sub points, and you're not giving away the climax of the tale you're telling. You make it seem like, stay with me. We're going someplace interesting, without having to say that, right? You never have to say, stick with me here. I know this seems weird, but we're going someplace. It's clear that this narrative is all building in a direction. And when you do land on your point, there's still the aha moment, but I don't feel like it was a magic trick. I feel like there's this enormous amount of trust building that you do through the way you construct your narratives.
That is interesting, and something I would not have pulled out on my own. But it's what you describe. I have a huge thing with plots that break audience trust, as in I hate that. So it makes sense that I would have. But it's great to hear it. Thank you. That's really kind.
Yeah, you. It's very clear that you have an enormous amount of respect for the audience. And I wouldn't call it an urgent respect. It's not like, it doesn't feel like you're being hasty to win their trust, but you are very careful and thorough about building trust very early on so that you stick around. And it doesn't feel tricky. It doesn't feel like you're, playing any kind of game with the audience. And so another thing that I picked up on this is that it felt more intimate. than past Polytechnic casts. And I got to think that this is a direct result of you not having time to abort. And you said in the Polytechnic cast there were plenty of aborted drafts of the recordings that you did, but I bet not as many as you had in the past. So it was an audio version of, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but this is an observation friends and my wife have made about my work, is when you look at my thumbnails, they're really fluid and full of energy. And then when I do the final drawing, and lots of artists have reported this, like every step you add to the drawing removes like 10% of the energy from the drawing. So like, you know, the more times you redraw the thing, the stiffer and stiffer and more lifeless it becomes. And that's why when you look at your thumbnails, they look like they're just bursting with life. And everything's moving perfectly, even if it's not anatomically correct, even if the perspective is weird, it just feels more vibrant. But yet, to get to the printable, reproducible image, you got to clean it up a little bit. These Polytechnic casts felt more like thumbnails. They felt more alive, and they felt more like we were really getting to know who you were. And yet, there was craftsmanship, because I noticed that you kept using the language, as you pointed out earlier. The thing that inspired me to hit record, almost as if that was a writing prompt, right? Which is a structural thing that helps you lead with the headline. So that was great. Loved that. And even in the ones where you were whispering in a hotel room, it felt like you were always talking from a sense of, this is something I care about a lot. I'm not just phoning in a topic that I know a lot about in order to sit on my expertise, but more like, you know, what do I really, really care about today? Which, again, think about the people that you've known in your life, Rob. How many people can you count on your hand who can readily do that? Right?
I assume a lot. but we don't wander around sharing that, right? It's not like you show up in the elevator. You know what I'm caring about today. Or I'm getting my coffee. Hey, you know what I'm caring about today? You know, it's not. That would be a fun commercial. Actually, we should do that for Lean Into Art if we ever make a commercial. And especially,
well, maybe I say this. Okay, so maybe this is one of my problems, is that I'm one of those guys who does that by accident all the time, and so like I feel like I'm surrounded by people who just can't do it. Like, I am the guy who will say, you know what I care about today, because somebody made the mistake of mentioning Silverhawks.
Oh, if it comes up, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Like, yeah, I'll go there quickly and easily. Yet, I assume other people can too. It's okay.
Well, let me say this: communicating that clearly is a skill. You can at least cop to that.
True. Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. It's yes.
Things I would have liked to have seen more of. Let's put it this way. So, like, this is where I say to the students, like, oh, this is great, this is great, that's great. Here's the thing that I think would really make it sing, is I felt like what I hear you doing, and I think this is because I know you well, but I hear you skirting around using anecdotes. Like, you'll use anecdotes, but you will abstract them to the point where they're no longer coming from your personal experience.
What is he talking about?
What?
Yeah. What is he talking about? Yeah, no, you're right.
And it's not, it doesn't obfuscate things, but it turns the volume down a little bit on me connecting to what you're saying. It makes it a little bit more abstract, right? It's the difference between, you know, it's like, it's well, I don't want to even make an analogy on it. It's just, it feels to me like if, and I know you can't share every anecdote, right? Like, and I myself, you know, I'm not throwing everything out on the table. You know, there's things that are purely private, or things you can't share because day job or whatever, right? There's things I can't share because, like, I'm under contract, you know. But and even when I talk about, like, oh, I once dated a girl who said this terrible thing to me or whatever, I don't name names, but you know, there are times where it feels like, you know, you could actually say that this is a thing that specifically happened to you, and it was a specific kind of person. It was a man or a woman, and it was at this point in your life. You don't have to pull it back that far.
It was a person for sure. It was, yeah. You're right. You're completely right. That's I'm adding that to my goals.
And then the only other like big observation I had was that, and I am 100% just as guilty of this, is that we both ran long. We both had a difficult time keeping it under 10 minutes. And when I did do one that was under 10 minutes, I remember Ashley commented on it and said, like, hey, you could actually call this one a microcast.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oops. I don't know.
Well, and I know only speaking for myself, I know that part of it is this weird impulse I have to, like, there's like almost like this compulsion to say, like, make it worth their while. Make it worth somebody's while for coming here. And that's part of the reason that I always try to construct an essay. And then it's also like, well, is 7 minutes enough? They spent this time downloading it. Let's give them enough, right? Sometimes enough is too much, right? Sometimes like 7 minutes can do the job, and I know that that's something, a skill I need to work on developing. I mean, the show, Leading to Art, the average show length is 2 hours,
which we've mostly embraced, but we do question.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not complaining about that. I'm just saying that, like, it's pointing to a comfort zone that we have, that when you're doing a journal microcast, maybe that's like an extra comfort zone that you need to breach.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. Oh my gosh. So Audio Boom obviously creates this artificial limitation of 10 minutes. And so here we have all sorts of all sorts of participants with this really tight limitation going on. And then like Eva overall, and she was hosted on SoundCloud, not with the same severe limitation, but the overall space limitation. And so I don't know if that's partially what drove her episode length shorter a little bit. But
she kept each one under 5 minutes.
No, I thought she started 10.
Oh, did she?
7. Maybe I thought it was north of 5, and then it went to 5, and then it was like, maybe 5 toward the end. It's like, oh my word, so many clear points, so genuine, so interesting, so short. And I'm like, what? This is black magic to me. I don't understand how you're using all this language, how many thoughts I just had, and then, that was only a few minutes.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So there was, just with those examples alone, I'm like, this is something I need to look into. So yeah,
that itself is like another huge benefit I got from this thing. Is I love the fact that people came to the dojo and showed us how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I so appreciate that. So appreciate people coming in and showing me how to do something that I clearly have a difficult time pulling off. Yeah, so I'm going to be downloading those and listening to them again to unbox. Like, okay, how did they pull this? Like, what are they doing here? I'm going to have to watch Ava in slow motion to find out how she produces those Hadouken fireballs.
Yes. I mean, yeah, and even working in Dragon Ball metaphor, too. So
yeah,
unbelievable. So that was pretty amazing. And as with the others as well, because her example got even more extreme because she even went shorter than the normal 10 minutes, that I became accustomed to through everyone participating on Audio Boom. So let's see. So what do you think? Should we talk about a little bit of Thunder Punch Daily?
Talk about TPD?
Yeah,
sure.
I want to admit that it's hard to critique it a little bit for me. I can get perspective on it, but I've been a fan, right? So I'm gonna push on that fan bubble and take a shot.
Let me before you go any further, let me just say that, like, that is always kind of weird and off-putting to me when you say stuff like that, because historically I've gotten so little input on the Thunder Punch Daily, and I know you've said a lot of nice things about the Thunder Punch Daily show, and guys like Joshua Buchanan have said extraordinarily nice things to me in person about like what that show meant to him and everything. But that it's a very small sampling. It's a very enthusiastic sampling, but it's a small sampling. So I never knew, like, okay, clearly a couple people like really dig it, but I never got like a ton of feedback. And in the final, in episode 180, when I was wrapping up the Art SoundOff challenge, I mentioned that. I threw that out and I just said, and I was only mentioning it not as a complaint, but more like a data point. Like as I investigate what I want to do with this thing next, am I doing it to service an audience? Well, I don't get a ton of feedback on it. So is it performing a service? And if so, do I need to change what kind of service I'm performing with this thing? That's all I was throwing it out there. But I got like a lot of feedback from people after that. I got a lot of really nice messages that like were very, very touching. But yeah, but anyway, that's all to say is like that's another thing I got to sort of wrap my brain around. Is that I had very little data on what value that thing had outside of my own personal expression and enjoyment of thinking about things aloud. So with that, we can move on. Sorry.
No, I mean that is another interesting angle because it is easier to do ongoing reflection and whatnot. So reflection and analysis, if you're trying to continually refine a product, it's a lot easier to do if you're just doing it all the time and making little adjustments and continue to ship. It's a lot harder to do if it's you have to unbox this some giant big delivery of feedback all at once, or and just making a big event of it versus just a normal day-to-day thing. And honestly, I have the similar issues as far as the Polytechnicast, but okay. There's so much about it that well, I mean, honestly, I patterned the Polytechnicast after it. So, I mean, in a way, right? I mean, it's like, this is I want to do a podcast that has, and I need to go back and double check the dates of all this stuff. Like the first Polytechnicast post was quite a while ago, right? And so it might not have been born out of Thunder Punch Daily, but like it certainly was reborn out of Thunder Punch Daily, right? Where, so there's a lot of things that you're doing as far as how you frame your points. You seem to have a pretty similar bias that, so much so that we ended up doing this whole project together.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as far as motivation to provide a thing as an act of service, it's, I hear you, man. I really, really, really hear you because it's, I literally, if, I don't know if I could hit record if I didn't have a thing that I thought was going to be helpful. And, or I mean, it just, those get thrown out because it just, blah, 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 hit stop. Anyway, so you have this framing. The framing of I think it's fun. You've got an intro, you've got an outro, and it's just this, it's almost, it's just super polished, right? Where both in the its form as a thing you create and share on the internet, right? Where it's got, I mean, the file has metadata, you've got the whatever. I mean, so like you go into fine detail in creating a well-packaged thing and a well-distributed thing, and the content of the thing has such attention to that, it emanates the bias of like, I'm going to make this thing to be useful. So, right, and even to the extent that you're sharing the He-Man moral at the end. So the outro is a He-Man moral. The intro is the awesome theme written by your brother and then voiced by Tara Platt, and which is amazing. I mean, I'm like, man, I need to go hire someone to or do something nice for someone that can say my name that proud.
Yeah. Though, like, I got
amazing.
that. I illustrated a book for Tara Platt, and part of the compensation in the contract that I worked out was I said, it'll cost you this much, and I'd like you to record one thing for me. And so when I called in that favor, I specifically said, like, try to sound like you're really proud of me.
Which, honestly, excellent move. And so I love the packaging of Thunder Punch Daily and the content and your approach to essentially, the underlying motivation of providing something useful, but then the progression of Thunder Punch Daily. I mean, I've been with it since the beginning, and it's this this mini dojo where it's like your analytic eye set of contraptions that you kick and punch, and so
That's
right.
a pretty cool metaphor.
It's It's right, and so and anyway, yeah. So it's an interesting construct as as a solo podcast. Almost in like so polished. I think it's like it's so beyond like you're like a typical quick and easy to host and post kind of thing, right? Where it's like, wow, that's really setting the bar high, right? That's a critique, but it's pretty mild and whatever.
Well, that's almost glowing. I never thought of it that way because I actually have it set up on my phone, so I could do it exactly the same way from my phone.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've got like an audio recording app called Audio Evolution DAW, Digital Audio Workstation.
Mm.
And it basically looks like GarageBand for a phone.
Hmm.
And you can import, tracks and have multi-layered tracks, and so I could just like import the intro song, record my bit, put in the He-Man moral, export it. The only wrinkle that I found is I can't do MP3 out of it. But I could do an MP4, which would still play on the web player, and it might be dicey about playing on some people's, or no, it's an M4A file, so it might be dicey playing on some people's players. But worst comes to worst, I could do it entirely from my phone too. But I never thought of it as being like that polished. But I guess compared to using something like Audio Boom, or just like doing a recording on SoundCloud right from your web browser, I suppose so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it shows a lot of production value, and which is awesome, but also kind of a hard. It's a little bit hard to say and follow me, where it sets a high hurdle for that. Which I'm trying to think. Like, one thing that I do enjoy is that you're on a similar quest as far as figuring out the whole. So when you apply the idea of the service intent, then I think the concept of professionalism comes into play, and I think it's professionalism is kind of dangerous in a way. I mean, it's a useful tool, but also it has a lot of it can have a lot of side effects, which I can only say I can't say anything about what you're doing that I can't say about myself, right?
Sure.
I mean, because professionalism can seem like standoffish, right? And it's a really difficult thing to wrestle with, and I'm not saying that this is something that I get the feel of because Thunder Punch Daily. Hopefully you take this as a compliment. It's very much intended as one. It'd be like saying Mr. Rogers was standoffish, right? In which, you know what, he's not, but he's also got a very professional role, right?
Yeah, that's I take that as nothing but the highest of praise. But yeah, I see what you're saying. He says hi, neighbor, and when I was a little kid, I said hi, Mr. Rogers, but he didn't hear me. Right? He feigned that he was hearing me, but I got to an age when I said, "Oh, he's not really talking to me."
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So let's see. I don't know. What I'm annoyed with is that I don't have anything that I think is actually what you need to improve, because this is
you're pointing at something that, I mean, if the whole idea was I'm trying to practice vulnerability and exposing more of my humanity, you're pointing to an obvious friction point in that whole equation. And, I have received, and this is, I mean, you and I know how ludicrous this is, but maybe somebody else wouldn't know this, is that I've gotten emails from people who are like, "Dear Mr. Drozd, I'm sure your thousands of idiot fans would disagree with me on this, but I'm here to prove that you don't know what you're talking about," right? They operate from the sense of they're taking me down because obviously this is well done. I mean, and I share this on the Leaning Tarcast. I've shared this before when I was on the Greg Schiegel's Stuff Show podcast, and he was interviewing me. I told this story because he was asking me about the whole those who can't teach argument, and he was saying, like, "Do you ever get that from your teaching?" I'm like, "Yeah, I have." And it comes from two camps, in my opinion. It comes from the camp of somebody who had a bad experience with a teacher, and if that's the case, my heart goes out to them. It sucks they had a bad experience with a teacher. It doesn't mean all teachers are bad. Or it comes from the sense of somebody trying to like gotcha. I gotcha, you know. And I when that happens, I look around. I'm like, okay, well, what's the evidence to support this sort of gotcha attitude? And I think it's because when I do something, I try to make it as professionally packaged as possible, which can make it seem standoffish and like giving me I don't want to say an air of authority, but something in that vein, some kind of air of authority that I'm not aspiring to, right? And if you're trying to be vulnerable, that kind of professionalism can make it seem trumped up, phony, or incongruous at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, I can really hear the incongruous thing because it's because inherently the professionalism says this portion of my human experience is off the table, right? Mm-hmm. What you're going to experience is this subset.
Yep.
And if something comes into light outside of that, then it's like, well, it sounds like some folks may not deal with that as,
sure,
constructively. So I really feel like I whiffed it pretty hard on the critique, but because normally I honestly, ask anyone I work with. I have lots of critique, and you've experienced this too, right? I mean, but it's just, you really picked something that I love a lot, and I just don't. I'm not into trying to wish it could have been better, right? I'm like, that was great. Chocolate cake.
Well, that's encouraging to hear. It still astonishes me because I'll tell you, in doing it, every episode I dropped in November, I was nervous about. I was like, oh, was that any good? I don't even know.
Yeah.
And I walked away from each one of them, and I pointed this out as a benefit. This was one of the like reflective things when I finished. I was like, I'm kind of glad that I was up against such a wall schedule-wise, because there were a lot of times where I would have gone back and done something different, or I would have resaid something, and then, but because I was committed to it, and I shipped it, and that discomfort that I felt, and like, ooh, did I say that? That was a weird thing to say. I don't know how I feel about that. It made me realize that it made it more concrete to me that this is something you need to chew on more, pal. So I got like a direct benefit out of like by shipping my reflection and being uncomfortable about it. It made me more attentive to that reflection. Does that sound like words?
Yeah, uncomfortable reflection as a service. It's a good motto.
But like the thing I picked up as like one of the theme like word phrasings of the thing was like I kept doing this thing where I'd say like what was the word I used? Oh, it was right at the end of one of them. I said like, at the beginning of the episode I said, I like to stand behind my projects, not in front of my projects. I like to make it about the project that I'm supporting, but not about me being like, hey, look at me. Oh, yeah, and I do this thing too. It's more like, hey, I do this thing. And yeah, I'm here too, right? That's the emphasis that I like to play. And then the end of the episode, as I'm talking and get a little bit more comfortable, I say, so maybe next time when I'm hiding behind my project, and I was like, hiding? Why did I just say hiding?
Yeah.
And I kept doing that. I kept like these unconscious or what am I trying to say? Unintentional words would come out, and I would go, whoa, underline, why did you say that? And normally, again, that would get ditched. But because I was up against a tight deadline, I shipped it anyway, and that made me even more aware of it. Right?
It so embodies why journaling is useful.
Yeah.
It does, because you are in this mode of production and getting the words out of you, and now once they're out of you, you can observe them. And in the act of Art SoundOff, you're likely, if you don't just then re-record or whatever, you are going to then share that and potentially have additional conversation and reaction too, which is now even deeper exploration possibility of that kind of journaling process.
But there was one thing that, I guess you kind of covered that. You talked about this whole thing about like the navigating the professionalism, service, intent versus expression. Mm-hmm. And I think we both kind of walked away with the sense of like, yeah, we just kind of got a clearer focus on what our expression is.
Exactly. And we actually, so I thought we hit that one in the beginning of the show, where it's,
Yeah, we did.
in a way, it's like the one of one of the takeaways, for me is that, well, I'm appreciating that. Well, this is my style of, like, so when I got uncomfortable like that, like, I know I genuinely did it. It's like, this cost me discomfort. And yes, this uncomfortable hunk of podcast, etc.
That's so good. This cost me discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, it's so quotable.
Right. Anyway, that is a that was a measure, and then noticing that was a pattern that came up, and that's again the whole benefit. You doing enough journaling to start to pick up the patterns and get the ideas out. You inherently are going to have, like, deeper observations, which leads to that feedback loop of you'll never run out of things to talk about.
Oh, no way. No way. I mean, there was a good number, and I bet this was the same way for you, Rob, where the 5-minute lead up to actually doing the thing, you were like, what the heck do I have today? What could I possibly?
I forgot to mention that step. Yes.
Yeah. And
Yep.
that was a good number of days where I was like, God, what the heck? I got the mail. I did some more coloring. I talked about that yesterday. Jeez, what do I got? And I just found that in this, like, writing journaling, I found that, and I remember there was a Thunder Punch Daily where, like, I said it aloud and surprised myself, where the act of writing it out engaged my mind in such a way to look for those ideas.
Mm.
By just simply writing a list of what I did, I found my brain kicking into the pattern finding mode. So
Mm-hmm. It's a practice.
Yeah.
Just like, when you hear the phrase writing practice, journaling practice, it's what comes out of that is you have this initial discomfort, but you're going to be increasing your skill and familiarity with every bit of these steps, and then eventually you'll be out of the sort of the nitty-gritty basic production of it and pushing yourself through it to then gain deep, new observations as you're you have those initial skills down. You'll be getting the more analytic eye practice because you've set up all your dojo machinery.
I never thought of it that way. That's an awesome metaphor for it. Now we just need to come up with a metaphor for what our different martial arts styles would be, and that leads me to something Ashley was talking about in one of her reflections on her Audio Boom channel, and she talked about how your Polytechnicast was what she liked to start her day with because it was warm and calm and reassuring and thoughtful and, hey, we're going to talk about a thing and it's going to be worth it. And then she said that she saved mine for the afternoons because I was like a shot of caffeine.
That's so funny. That's interesting. It's because I love music that is, so aggressive.
Yeah.
And I don't know. And so it's kind of funny to hear that as an observation, but yet it does, it rings true. I know I have that kind of thoughtful proceeding forward step by step.
You're not Bob
walking.
Ross or anything, but there's like a calm commitment, right? I think that's actually a phrase that you use a lot.
Yeah. So that was so funny. Anyway, yeah, that's cool. So we have, if we're working on a streaming schedule, we've got our prototype, right? The
streaming schedule.
Streaming, like, so if we're doing, like, if we do a Lean Into Art radio station, we know, like, oh, okay, well, morning time, let's wake up now.
Well, I was trying to come up with, like, metaphors for martial arts style.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll have to cogitate that.
I think the direction I'll go with it is to misappropriate it a little bit.
Okay.
Not because I don't think there's a literal martial art that would really work, right?
No. I
Like
wasn't saying like pick
I
one
would
that
I would
exists.
say it's like yeah, it would be mine would be mellow Wikipedia reading with a visit to
I was thinking of an animal. You're always supposed to pick an animal, right?
No, okay, so it's I'm a Wikipedia mongoose. Some topics but most topics are are very very safe, and we can explore them in a nice mellow fashion. But when there's danger, mongoose has got to jump. It's got to jump, show its intensity.
Oh, okay. I like it.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like also like tiger style. Tiger style is like they patiently wait, and they strike exactly when they have to.
Oh.
They don't like to waste energy. They're not like cheetahs. They're not chasing everything all over the place. They can wait for 9-10 hours waiting for their thing.
So if your podcast were an animal martial art jersey, then what would it be?
Chipmunk, no question about it. Those little things that run across the street 150,000 miles an hour. And they seem completely inconsequential, but they're kind of cute. And you hope you don't hit it with the car.
Yes, excellent. We have a podcast spirit animal, and
Tiger style, chipmunk style.
That can only be a good thing. Huh.
All right. Well, I'm
sure all over the place, but
I'm sure that the leaners will come up with something much better.
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, give our podcast spirit animals. Why not?
We might just be punchy from doing 30 microcasts in 30 days.
I know. And then missing it after a couple days pass. Stockholm syndrome is powerful.
I was thrilled to see that Owen Jolens he was Fable Impact on Audio Boom, and he's at owenjolens.com. Professional comic colorist who participated in the Art SoundOff challenge. He made an announcement that he's going to start doing something with this thing. He's going to start doing some podcasts on his own.
Yeah, I'm absolutely keeping an ear open to hear when that news drops, and then obviously can't wait to check it out.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Same here. We'll share an update here as well.
And it made me feel a lot better about how I kind of what's the word for it? I didn't coerce him, but I cajoled him into participating by calling him out in the announcement episode, where I was like, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool if somebody like Owen Jolens got involved?" And then he like did his first one. He's like, "Well, Jersey kind of called me out, so I'm here." And I was like, "Oh, I hope he doesn't have a bad time. So I'm gonna feel a little bit complicit." And then he had a good time, and now he's gonna do a thing out of it. So now I get to take partial credit. That's pretty great.
It's the best. It's the best cajoling scenario.
Because it's gonna be a great podcast, and I get to go, "Hey, I talked him into it."
Exactly. Well, you get to Mr. Miyagi nod.
Oh yeah, that's right. Actually, yes. I don't want to be the overbearing mother. I want to be the proud Mr. Miyagi who stands and smiles that way. I got to practice that smile.
It's difficult. So, not that I have.
That's exactly where my brain went. Was Rob every morning going like, okay, when Kaya graduates.
Actually, yeah, I don't know. That's someday.
All right. Well, do we need to get out of here? Do we need to wrap this up?
I think we do. I think we have reflected. That was a big event. Very happy to have been part of it, and honored that so many leaners partook in it. And I think we'll probably have a little bit of follow up or whatnot. I'm hoping to capture the tweet stream, and at least I'll have that in some data format that other people can do something with, and hope maybe I'll do some playing with it too, and see what happens with it. And that's not to say of course if other folks are posting archives or whatnot, share those links. We'll put links to that too. We're not trying to hog SEO traffic or some stuff like that, right? We want people to get to your stuff.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting resource. It's like this history of our event. So
Yeah, it's an artifact of the event that we all encountered together, right?
Mm-hmm.
The yearbook.
Yeah, exactly. So that'll be coming, and we'll share a link to that.
Yep. And I mean, thanks to everybody who participated. It was, Rob and I started the challenge thinking that, like, well, we'll just do it. And maybe one or two people will play along. And, like, a handful of you guys played along, and you guys, like, far exceeded what we expected, right? Actually, I don't know what we expected as far as everybody else's microcast, but what we encountered was, like, just so exciting and fun. And as I said in the Thunder Punch Daily microcasts, and I'm saying it here because I know that not everybody who listens to Lean Into Art listens to the Thunder Punch Daily show, and I'm not complaining. Pick what you want to listen to. But as I said on that show, it was cool because I got to know them better, right?
Yeah.
That's just one of the other neat benefits that come out of this thing is I feel like I know all those people a little bit more, and if we bump into each other at a comic convention in the future, we'll have a lot to talk about.
I echo that, and I would, yeah, totally. We'll try to get on anyone's calendar who's at the same comic convention who partook in Art SoundOff. So
that would be awesome. Everybody, yeah. Well, here, simplify. Everybody come to Kids Read Comics. There we go.
Done.
June, Ann Arbor, Michigan, 2015. Okay.
All right.
If you enjoyed this discussion, if you got something out of it, and you want to say, boy, I wish I could let Rob and Jersey know what this show means to me, after all, because feedback loops are important. You could go to our Patreon. That's at patreon.com/leadintoart. You could support us for as little as $1 a month, and then there's access to a whole bunch of extra stuff there, the extra lean shows, and all of the Thunder Punch dailies and Polytechnicasts that we discussed today. You don't have to spend any money if you don't want to. You could also just go to iTunes, give us a star review, however many stars you think we deserve. You don't even have to write a review, but if you write a review, that makes us happy. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, giving it a thumbs up helps more people find the show. All these different things, like star reviews, thumbs ups, help more people find the show. Or just tweeting about the show is actually a huge benefit. Anything else that we need to make noise about, Rob?
No, not yet. We're always cooking things. I hinted at this before in my journaling, but nothing to share yet. But
all right, well, just stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
And we'll be back in 2 weeks with another Lean Into Art cast. And until then, I have been Jersey Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jersey on Twitter.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Twitter.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching and hanging out with us and chatting. And we'll see you guys next time. I'm going to stop the broadcast. Good night.
Cool. Thank you. Good night.